Jim, before we got on, you were telling me a story about a big licensing deal you were involved in. Can you share some of that with our audience?
Yeah, so I think this is one of a good example of diversifying my practice, moving from New York to North Carolina and working on the company side as opposed to just investors. Although I'm a securities lawyer and have done some deals with 9 digits in them on the security side, probably my biggest deal of my career has been and probably will be a licensing deal. I have a client who is collecting about $75 million a year in royalties from a large biotech company for a drug that they developed, and I kind of guided them through the process. It's a really interesting story. It's an orphan drug that was spun off out of some technology in Duke University. A professor got a little bit of money, and this is a drug that is caused by an enzyme not being produced in the cells of the people who are afflicted with this. So they had a bird that was inflicted with this disease, and what happens is the enzyme processes starch and breaks it down into sugar. And when you can't do that, what happens is essentially the cells grow larger and larger, full of starch, and they stop the body organs from functioning. You literally kind of self-strangulate yourself by all your cells ganging up on you. If you have the enzyme, then that doesn't happen. So this professor was fooling around the laboratory. I think at Duke they prefer not to call it fooling around the laboratory, but you know, that's basically lawyering is fun and scientists have fun, so we have that in common. But basically what happened was he was figured out a way to give this bird the protein, and this bird could barely walk, and he gives it this enzyme that processes it, and it flies across the room and then hits itself on the wall and falls down. But that was progress.
But it got up.
That's
Please tell
it.
me.
And my client
the bird survived.
Exactly. My client heard that story and decided to fund this project, bring out of the university setting. I guess back in 2007, it was one of 16 drugs approved by the FDA. The FDA is a very slow organization. And my client licensed it to a large Boston biotechnology company which developed it. After the drug was developed, they did a movie about it. It's called Extraordinary Measures. And most of the patients who have this disease, they're born with it, and they die as infants or as young children. And the movie, it starred Harrison Ford and Brendan Fraser.
Oh, yeah.
And Brendan Fraser had 2 children who had this disease. So he worked in the drug industry in big companies, and he got really motivated to find the cure for this disease. The movie is about how he meets Harrison Ford. They start doing things. They give it to the big company, and the big company eventually comes out with the drug. It didn't stay in the theaters that long, but it's a really good movie. I recommend it to anybody who's in drug development, healthcare types of industries, because most of the times I think people's families don't know what they do. And that's a really good concrete example that you can just kind of bring the kids on Saturday night and you show this video, and all of a sudden Mary Jane and little Richard know what Daddy or Mommy does all week, and it was a really nice family story. It was a great success for my client. They're still collecting money, and a very good outcome in the medical world. And so that's the type of stuff I'd really like to get involved with. I wish I could do that all the time. But that's a kind of a career premium type of deal.
But it sounds like you literally were involved in taking this idea or this concept and helping it become a reality, working with your clients.
Yeah, I counseled them through the process. There were a number of decisions they had to make about, they were doing the stuff on the science, I was doing the stuff about advising them about money, and they had to make a decision whether they try to do an IPO, go public. And I'll tell you, as a securities lawyer, it's really hard to tell your client that they shouldn't go public. But that's what the advice was.
Yeah, come on. No.
I mean, that's how I make mega bucks is being a securities lawyer. But but it wasn't the right situation for them. They didn't have the internal structures and processing to do that. They were much better off handing it over to somebody who could actually bring it from clinical trial stage to actual commercial project, to an actual commercial drug. And there's a lot of things, bad things that can happen in the middle of all those dots. So I think they made a good decision, and I got to do this big licensing deal instead of one of those boring IPOs.